And I think that
But I think it also
goes along with the need to have a really big
where kids overgeneralize a lot of
time, or as much as possible,
like,
in order to
trying to teach occurring and because even
how we sort of like that idea of color is what I use, but we don't know what other people use that. So if we want to collect that data,
just age development, because there's certain things that, like Maria or someone that's sick, they can gray year old.
So if I can get everyone back.
Like theme stuff where they're just able to identify the themes, and it's not that hard.
the way we
Like Brenda really struggled with it.
definitely we need more normal definitely the way we record their growth over time so that we want to be able to track them.
And you can say, so we're just going to do a whip around with your grade school teams. We're just going to go around and kind of share out some themes or ideas or major things that emerged from your grade level conversation. So take a minute to figure out what those themes that emerged were in your own head, and then we can have more than one person from each team share out. So what we can do is just, if you have a major theme that emerged in your group, just go ahead and we'll just whip around and just share it out. And if you want to go more than once, we'll just keep going until everyone is exhausted.
Or until we run out of time. Just a couple minutes.
We'll start. I'll start. So one thing that kind of happened across from our ahas to our questions for this is sort of the effects that it has. Like, we know what we think and we know why we're doing this, but we wonder what the students' big takeaway is from this. So, like, from the straight emotional level to the intellectual level of when we break things down and we put targets in this way. Like Samara was saying that in her class, she'll be like, so why are we learning this, guys? And the kids are like, so we can move to the next level. And Samara's like, no, we're learning this so that you've learned how to read and, so you can obtain information. So how do you balance that, and like when does it become like what's beneficial to you to like what's harmful or detrimental to students and how they think about themselves and how they think about their learning?
Yeah, I was comparing it to in math, this discussion we've been having recently about memorizing algorithms, the Swan wave, the steps versus the Mars tasks, like thinking, mathematical reasoning, critical thinking. Those two things that in language arts the same thing, looking at skills like teaching commas as an isolated skill, we just need to be careful that we're not leaving out the context that we need to be teaching writing and teach commas when it comes up naturally in the story, so the purpose is really connected, and the big idea of why we need these skills is there, because otherwise it can start to become these isolated parts that kind of lose their bigger meaning.
I concur with my teammates.
I just feel like second grade talked about a lot of different stuff.
Definitely the theme of that they just talked about of like, again, that tipping point between like motivation and frustration, and motivation versus like, wow, I'm always at the bottom of the list. I'm always, set it up.
And then the idea of being at the bottom of the list is often connected to, I think fourth grade named them as outliers. For me, outliers are students who are receiving so many other resources, and yet there is something in their learning that is beyond what I am trained for, and I feel even Mr. Brown may be trained for sometimes. Like, for example, if a student is dyslexic but they're not identified as dyslexic, but everything is pointing at it, and we don't know how to assist that student in what they're dealing with in their little brains, So we can throw as many goals at them and whatever, but, you know, so outliers was it one of the things that we're talking about, and like those students that need so much more support and different kinds of goals, and we appreciated that IEP goals were presented, and so that was one way to support and help.
Can I jump back for a second before, just quick?
I just want to play it like 4 minutes.
Oh, okay. Really fast, I was listening to NPR last night, and they were talking about, like, people who were successful and not successful, and that, like, there was this whole long study of whatever, and they were looking at cadets at West Point, I don't know. But, and they were looking, it was like this whole social science survey of all these different people in different places, but I caught part of it, and they were talking about the people who ended up being successful weren't necessarily like the strongest or the smartest or this and that, but they're people who set a goal and stuck to it versus people who set a goal, didn't meet it, and then came up with a new goal, and so that's
I was just going to say the maintenance piece, how people found ways to maintain the feedback loop, because I find this to be something that's extremely important, but on a day-to-day basis, not urgent in making the next day happen successfully. So how to find that time is like still a question.
We had a lot of discussions about just the challenges around publicizing student goals and having kids be aware of their goals versus other kids' goals, and sort of different ways to try and navigate around that, such as having whole class goals that are achievable for the whole class and feeling like they can meet that goal, having self-selected goals, publicizing, like it sounds like 4th grade does, when a student reaches a goal but not naming what the goal was. There's ways to do that that are not going to feed into kids constantly comparing themselves to each other, which I think is ultimately the thing that is most detrimental versus a goal that we set for this point in the age of 8.
Well, and then also that thinking about, which I think many of us have always done, is talk with kids about their progress and how much they've grown, and not just be so focused on like the statewide or district-wide end goal, but really making sure that they understand that as long as they're moving and how much they've moved is really just as important.
And then we'll move over to 4th edition. We have 1 minute.
We talked about making a rubric for writing instead of a checklist because it's just too long, and the idea of if a student is needing to meet 5th grade standards, say, and they're at a 2nd grade level, is like 4th grade plus 5th grade plus 3rd grade plus 2nd, it's just way too much. So making a rubric that we would use for the same actual rubric, use that piece of paper all year with different writing assessments, and then maybe grading it in different colors so that kids could still have it's almost like they would have a goal for a certain section of their writing, say, and then see if the next paper that they wrote, if they've moved up in that area, but not naming like every single standard because no one found that to be manageable or useful as a teaching tool or for the students, but still having ways that were, across grade level rubric that have a lot of the goals embedded in them, where kids would be able to visually see that, and teachers would as well. But
that was part of the discussion of it, just when the gaps get so big when they're older that it becomes hard to manage when you have so many kids and so many levels that are missing. So that's a way just to look at for the student and for the teacher to kind of quickly see the patterns. And then for kids who are very far behind, those goals are easily generated for them because it's like the proof is in the pudding kind of thing, like, oh, I need to move this up a couple notches, and this is what moving it up looks like, and this is why I'm working on this station, because if I can master this, I can move this up. So it's just like a very sort of concrete visual way for all of us to kind of look at the same piece of paper over and over again and just be moving on it. Because some of the other ways are just tricky at this age for various reasons.
So I just want to, and I know, sorry, we were 1 minute over, I really want to share this last aha that I have, and Kate, I want to appreciate you for helping me with this aha, which is just the timeline that's at the bottom of the 2nd grade poster I had absolutely nothing to do with. And I feel like summarizes so well kind of this process that we go through in order to make this communication of student goals happen. And it's been a challenge for me, just to be transparent. It's been really a challenge for me to portray that this is a difficult process, that it takes a long time, and you keep having to revamp the process, and that whatever process you're going through is good as long as we're going through a process, and each, at a grade level or independently. And so for me, a big aha and takeaway from today was that, like, no one's at the end of the process, right? It's like we're all still working on it, and we're all still getting there, and I don't feel like I'm done with the process at all. And as I went to share, I'm like, I think my name's even too far up. to move down a little bit. And so I just want to share that and be transparent with you guys about that, like, this is a lot of work, and this is a tough process, and thank you all for being really present today and going through this. So, yeah.
I'll share an aha by way of segue, which is that Melena mentioned in her group, I hope it's okay to mention, but how do we manage all the things that we have to do in a day and manage the goals process? And if I want to check in every day, or what if I want to check, how do I do that? And it occurs to me that we haven't done a lot of naming or even having a discussion about, well, what should we be checking in with students about at what frequency? And maybe that is something to have a conversation about. What do we together think we should be talking to kids about daily versus weekly versus monthly versus trimestrally? That would be just useful to maybe get some discussion about another time, because our faculty meeting starts now. I noticed that most people got up and went to the bathroom over the course of that. The folks desperately need a 1-minute break, or can we press on? Can folks, if it's just a couple of folks, let's, so be back in 2 minutes, and well, before you go though, Tom, you want to make your announcement?
Okay, good afternoon. So, I'm here because I need some information, feedback from you guys. My department, Nutrition Services, is